the Joe Vore Podcast, JV Podcast Network. Joe Vore, Matt Haugen, Formula Drift driver, YouTuber. He does all kinds of stuff. I think you get the best hair that I've ever had on this podcast, by the way. So you got that going for you too. So I want to start out with this because, like I was just telling you, my brother would be way better at this than I am. He's the car guy. He loves cars. He follows all this stuff. So he's going to be excited that I'm doing this. But me, I'm completely clueless when it comes to a lot of this stuff. So I know that you're going to kind of teach me, and we're going to learn all as one today about what you do and everything about drift driving and all that kind of stuff. So if you could kind of just give like the breakdown, basically like the drift driving for dummies for me to, so someone like me could understand. So, to just tell us about, the event, the sport, what all goes into it, how it's, scored, judged, just give us the rundown. So if we were to come across this like on YouTube or TV or whatever, we could kind of be like, oh, I kind of know what's going on here.
Totally. So the way I like to kind of start with that is, if you've ever seen Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, that's a pretty popular movie. Obviously, the whole Fast and Furious series is. That is drifting. So if you've seen that, then you're already like a step ahead.
Okay.
If you haven't seen that, that's okay. But essentially, drifting is you're going sideways around the corner. So it is a form of motorsport. We'll get super basic. So we use front engine manual cars that are rear wheel drive. So that is pretty much, so you could think like a Mustang or Corvette. 240SX is a really popular one. So that's kind of the requirement. There have been other cars and variations, but generally that's the requirement especially for competition. That's what people are driving. So you gotta know how to drive stick.
I'm out. I'm done.
Yeah. It's not too bad to learn.
Yeah.
You can learn it. But so you're essentially going sideways around the corner, and so that's what makes it so different and unique than other forms of racing. And the point is to stay in this slide the whole time. And so if you come out of this slide, then the drift is over. And so for competition or anything like that, that's like a zero. And so you start out going straight, obviously, and then you initiate the car in one way, and in some way, that's kind of what we call it. So a common way is to use the handbrake, where you can just kind of flick the car and kind of use the momentum, and the car swings like a pendulum in a way. So if you swing it one way, it kind of snaps the other way. So you can kind of do that and then get on throttle, and it's actually like a controlled burnout slide at like high speeds. So what they're looking for in competition is they're actually judging us on line, angle, and style. So I like to
I saw that on the YouTube video that I watched when it came up at the end, and it showed like some different categories. We're kind of seeing it with the Olympics, some of these events, right? There's like a time aspect, and then there's style points as well. So I thought that was interesting because you guys aren't racing. This is all against like a clock, and then based on a judge on how you kind of, I guess, cut the corners, like how tight it is and things like that, right?
So so it's not timed actually.
Oh, okay.
And they're not judging, or they're not recording your speed. And it's not a race. And so really it starts out, the judges, is usually 3 judges. They say, hey, this is the line we want you to run. And so they'll draw out like a course. It's usually somewhere between like, let's say 3 and 5 turns. So they're pretty quick. Like a run's only like 30 to 50 seconds.
Gotcha.
And they'll say, we want your back bumper dragging across the wall in this area. And then we're going to put this like cone right here. We want your front bumper to, basically touch that as you come around. And so then they're judging you on how well that you did that exact line, as well as how much angle you had. They're looking for like more angle, the better, essentially. If it's slowing you down or like you get offline because of your angle, then they don't like that. And then style is kind of how it all came together, how it looks, how it kind of, how it sounds, that's kind of where the speed comes in and stuff like that. And so, everyone qualifies into a bracket, and then you battle each other. And so that's where it gets like really crazy. So you're not actually trying to beat the person by passing them as you would in any other form of racing.
Yeah.
Um, the lead driver, the higher qualifier, he leads first. And then the chase driver is basically trying to mimic the lead driver, do
Oh,
everything that he does and be as close as possible. And
yeah.
then you switch, and out of that, a winner goes. And then, yeah, you go through the whole bracket. So,
Wow. That's
yeah.
interesting. And one thing I kind of picked up there from what you said. So each race, it sounds like, or each event could be a little bit different, kind of what the judges want you to do. Am I following that
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
correctly? They could set things up different ways. Is that like a per, group of judges basis, or is that just based on, or is every event a little bit different? Cause I know, like, if we're talking cars here, like NASCAR, right? Like, you're always going around in a circle, but each race, some races are longer, some races are shorter. I
Mhm.
imagine the tracks are a little bit different. There's little factors that are into that. But in your case, is this based on, are different events a little bit different, or does it just kind of matter who the judges are? You could be at the same venue, but the race could be a little bit different based on who the judges are and kind of what they're going for that day.
So I would say, first of all, it kind of goes by series.
Okay.
Formula Drift is they're probably the most popular series in the world right now. There are other big competition series, professional series, but that's kind of the most well-known and the big one here in the United States. And so their kind of criteria, like that line angle style, that stuff doesn't really change season to season. They might make little changes and edits and things like that. The biggest variation is the tracks.
Okay.
And so it's a new track every event, as well as sometimes they will change what we call like clipping points and zones. That's kind of where I was talking about, like they want your front bumper here, back
Yeah.
bumper there. They'll change that season to season a little bit, even on the same track. But one of the biggest things that Formula Drift has done in the last couple of years is try to make the courses like a little bit easier for the drivers. I mean, it's incredibly hard and talented
Yeah.
what they're doing, but they want it to lead to closer battles, because that's what's like most exciting for the viewers, is
Right.
when the cars are really, really close. I mean, it just looks incredible. So
Yeah.
that's a little bit of a change they've kind of made in the past couple of years.
Interesting. So how did you get started in this? Was this because I know you hear stories, racing, sometimes it's something that's in the family and it's been kind of passed down, right? So I want to know, what's sort of your origin story with this? How did you get started? And I just imagine this is different than getting into something else, because I know when I was a kid and I was like, hey, mom, dad, I want to play basketball. It's a little bit easier to go get me some shoes and some shorts and call up the YMCA and be like, hey, when are your, do you guys have like basketball leagues for like 10-year-olds? Now there's a little bit, I don't know how old you are when you got started. Obviously, you got to be a little bit older to start driving a car. And there's certainly a lot more upstart expenses to do something like this. So what's sort of your origin story, how you got interested in this and how now you've turned this into something that you do and you compete?
Well, that's what's like kind of interesting, I guess, about my journey, or different, I would say, is and there's other drifters that have a similar story, but I don't come from any kind of racing family.
Okay.
And in fact, I never knew anybody that raced, like, ever, not even like a
Wow.
friend or a distant family member. Um, and that does create some barriers and some issues, because, like, I mean, think then you don't have a garage, you don't have a car trailer, you don't have
Right.
access to a lot of things that someone, even if someone in their family was into motorcycle racing, maybe they'd have some kind of area where you could keep a car,
Right. Or just an
and work
idea
on.
how to get started. I mean, you're really
Yeah.
starting from scratch on your own, I imagine.
Yeah, so it completely was from scratch. I wasn't one of those people that, like, there's drifting is a fairly new sport, right? So it was, the story kind of goes, there's some people say different things, but it really did gain its popularity in like the 80s and 90s in Japan.
Okay. Okay.
Um, some say it originated there, others try to argue that, but it doesn't really matter. So, but in the grand scheme of things, it's fairly new. And Formula Drift, I think, is there. I shouldn't even say, like, 15 or 20 years now. So they've
Wow,
been going
that's
for a
it.
little while,
Yeah.
but still, kind of new. So there's not really a lot of information out there. And I wasn't one of the ones who was like into drifting and knew about it, from like a young age. I had seen Tokyo Drift and thought it was super cool, and I always
Right.
loved cars. But it wasn't something I ever like thought I'd have the opportunity to do.
Yeah.
But I started building. I was always like into building and customizing cars
Cool.
from a pretty young age, like kind of as young as I really could, like 15 years old. I kind of started working on like my dad's car with him a little bit,
Yep.
and or even before that, work on him. But then I got like my own car when I was 16, and I worked on that. And
Yeah. What was your first car?
Toyota Tundra, actually.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's like a lifted truck, and
Right.
then it became like a bag truck, and it was just crazy adventure. But
Yeah.
um, I think my parents saw around when I was like 20 years old, I think it was, they saw that I like had this interest in racing, but never
Yep.
had gotten to do it. And so I was really lucky. They sent me to Bondurant Racing School here in Arizona.
Cool.
And what's cool about that is you don't need your own car. You don't need anything. You can go there, drive their cars, and they'll give you instruction.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so like, that was my first introduction. And basically kind of through that journey, I like learned a little bit more about drifting and got the opportunity to try it a little bit in the car I had. And I was like, this is where it's at. Like it really, I loved it. I thought it was way cooler than racing. And for whatever reason,
Yeah.
I really thought it was something I could pursue even at a hobbyist level.
Yeah.
But yeah, now it's like completely transformed, and now it's
Yeah.
pretty much what I do. So it's definitely not where I saw myself going. I'll say that. But
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's very interesting. And one of the videos that I watched as well, this was from September of 2019 on your YouTube channel. The name of the video, Our Last Formula Drift, right? And
Yep.
it was a really cool video because we had to see some of your highlights. We got some behind the scenes stuff, but I could really sense, and you just flat out said, I mean, there was some real, you were expressing some real frustration there. You were talking about, it seemed like, partners and suppliers maybe promised things or said things and really didn't kind of follow through their end of the deal, whatever it may have been. And it really seemed like, from your description and the way that you talked about it, really kind of ended your season. Can you kind of just go back and talk about what that was like and in that video, and kind of what all went down? Because I know now you're kind of gearing up you're going to be going to Formula Drift Japan, right? Coming up, is that next year?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So with that coming up, obviously you're not done forever. You're going to be preparing for this next event in Japan. But let's go back to September of 2019 from that video, because it just really jumped out to me. I was like, wow, this is, where you've seen some other athletes, in other sports where it's like, they've been doing it, they've been working so hard. And, sometimes it just gets to that point, it almost, I don't know if it was or not to be dramatic, but could have been approaching sort of a breaking point. I just detected a lot of frustration from you, because again, I don't know a ton about cars, but I do know that I know enough to know that it really doesn't matter how talented you are. You're really kind of battling against the grain if your car isn't in great shape, I imagine, right?
Yeah, no, that's a great observation.
Yeah.
I mean, that absolutely was I my term for it is like quitting moments. I don't really know where I
Yeah.
came up with that or heard it, but it was definitely a quitting moment for me, something where I was like, is this kind of it? Because like kind of backing up from there, I was in I competed in Pro-Am. And so if you compete in Pro-Am, depending on the series, they generally grant the top 3 in series points their license to compete in Formula Drift,
Okay.
the professional series. And so I was doing well in points, and I would have gotten my license, but my car broke the last event. And so I got
Ugh.
no points for that last event. And I was really gearing up to like, at that point, I was like, I really think I can do this. I think I have the skill and can develop it. And like, I have a pretty decent program going and some good sponsors. And I think it's kind of time to take it to the next level. And
Right.
so because of the car, I didn't make it. And so then I or I didn't get the license from that. And so then I petitioned to Formula Drift. I had gotten close with some of the guys there, and they really liked my program. They liked how professional it was and how serious I took it from day one, and how the car looked, how the team presented, all that.
Right.
And they saw that I had the skill, and kind of the I can't think of the term, but yeah. So they were like, "We'll give you your license, come and compete." And I was like, "Okay."
Wow.
So we're gonna
Yeah.
build a car, because the car that I had, like, it kept breaking. That was kind of like the plague through Pro-Am and all that
Right.
stuff. And so, I was at the same time, I had kind of right when we started the build, it was that summer, and then I was starting grad school in that fall.
Okay.
And so, and I went to grad school with the intent to get my master's as well as start a new business. So I'm like still doing Haugen racing, which is just part-time at the time, but doing that, doing the racing, building the car, grad school, and then, eventually pretty quickly there starting a new business
Yeah.
in grad school. And so I needed help building the car, and I wanted professionals helping me. At that time, I didn't have a shop that was capable of doing it ourselves. And so I'd heard pretty good things about this shop, and they worked with other pros in the series. I don't really want to like sit and talk shit about them, but at the end of the day, they did not do their job.
Yeah.
And we were supposed to have the car, and we were on track to have the car by like that February. Competition was going to start in June, I think.
Yep.
If I'm remembering all the dates correctly. And so that would give us, like 3-4 months to practice with the car. I mean, you can't just build a car and then go compete,
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
it's every car's different. It's, especially with this was a drastically different car than my past car.
Oh,
So
yeah. Okay.
the car, basically, long story short, we missed round 1 and we missed round 2. Car wasn't ready for either of them. And it was done like, I think 2 weeks before round 3. So we went to get like one practice session in, and then drove it out, and it broke. I didn't get any practice in.
Ugh.
I think I started on one practice lap and we were having issues. So I came back in. I didn't actually drift, but I got to like drive through the course once.
Yep.
And then we kind of got together as best as we could. And I went out for my qualifying lap. And it broke up in one turn, and same thing happened on the second qualifying lap. And so we didn't qualify.
Yeah.
So then we spent like there wasn't that much time, but we spent the next like month or two trying to fix it again and get it to work. But they had just rushed it, and they messed up some major things.
Yeah.
And that was the same story for round 4. And so at the end of the season, I only got to compete in 2 of the 4 rounds, and the car didn't work for either of those rounds.
Yeah.
And I was like, what sucked is I felt like I had done everything I could on my end.
Right.
And I felt like I had put in all the effort and done everything I could. And it was really, I felt taken from me from this shot.
For sure. Yeah. There's nothing worse than, just doing everything that you're supposed to do. You put your head down, you go to work, you put in all the effort, and you're counting on someone else to do what is their job. And when they don't hold up their end of the bargain, and when you're doing something as competitive, doing something that is competitive as it is, I mean, I'd want to rip my hair out. That's awful. I mean, that's absolutely gut wrenching. That just sucks. There's no other way to describe it. That sucks.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things where, like, if the car had worked, I think I would have done well, and it could have changed a lot of stuff. We had just started the YouTube channel. We could have had some better sponsors, gotten some more attention for the YouTube channel at that point. And then I definitely would have gone on and kept competing, because we'd been like, well, that season was fun and went well. I mean, at the end of the day, like, it has to be fun too, right? And that's the thing.
Right.
It was at least one of the least fun things I've ever done.
That's the other big thing you talked about in that video. So if people go watch, I mean, you're like, I just want to come out here and have fun and enjoy what I'm doing. Cause I imagine, you always want to win. And when people are competitive, they always want to win, but it's really hard to have fun knowing I'm doing everything I can, but the car isn't where it needs to be. So I can't have fun. Because at the end of the day, I always know if I put all my effort in and I don't leave anything out there, and I do everything right. And if I come up a little short, hey, at least I can go back and work on that. For you, like you said, you felt like something was taken from you. You felt like you were being held back. But at the end of the day, that's not your fault. It's whoever is in charge of the car and getting that ready. And yeah, like you said in that video and said just now, you weren't having fun. And that's that's kind of a lost, once you get into, pro-am, professional, competition in sport, that's something that gets lost. At the end of the day, it is a game. It is a race, and it's supposed to be fun. And you can see that, with athletes across all sports. You can see when they sort of lose it or become too business, and they're like, man, they just don't play off the crowd the same, or they just don't, do, these things are just a little bit different. It's almost like, they've gone a little too corporate. And then usually, sometimes we'll see kind of a resurgence if they're lucky enough to have a long enough career. We'll see the fun start to come back into it, because they're like, man, this is just, I can't believe I've been able to do this my entire professional life, and this is going to be over in a few years. I'm going to have to retire, because of my body or whatever, right? That's more so for football, basketball players and things like that. Your body can only go so long, but so it's a weird dynamic. But yeah, fun is something that should never be lost, because it is supposed to be fun. I mean,
I mean, that's like why I think that's why a lot of people pursue it. I mean, there's plenty of other jobs and careers and opportunities and things you can do, and some that are harder, some that are easier. And so it's like, I think part of it is that you get to do what you love to do, and you get to have fun. And so when it's not fun, then it's like, why are you even doing this?
Exactly. You gotta, because that's why I imagine you started doing it, right? You started doing it because it was fun. You were interested in it.
That was it. Yeah,
you were
I just thought it
invested
was
in
cool.
it, right?
I didn't have a YouTube channel or social media. Like, it was literally just
and if
fun.
you lose the reason that you started it, then what do you have? You know what I mean? Like that's tough. That's a great way to think about it. But I want to go back. So, okay, let's move forward now. Let's talk about Japan coming up. When is that going to be? Is it kind of up in the air? I don't know, COVID stuff, or, because that is a big travel trip. But when is it, sort of supposed to be? Is this kind of a big return to you? Is this almost kind of feel like a restart in your career in racing? Or, kind of where are we at looking ahead to the event in Japan?
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, like, after that rookie year in Formula Drift, going so poorly, at that point I had started this other business. It was not in automotive, and so I was like, I'm not going to go back into competition right again next year. I was like, I want to focus on building this business. At the time, we were doing the YouTube channel kind of part-time. I was like, I'm going to try to keep that going and just kind of go down this road. And then with fast forward a little bit, with COVID happening, right actually before COVID, that business I was working on shut down, and I pretty much lost all my money. And so then with COVID happening too, like right around that time, I was like, I don't have the money to compete this year. And I just had this business shut down. And it's like, basically I was like, I have kind of one last chance shot at this. And I was like, I think it's the YouTube channel. So I went full time. That was last February, focusing on the YouTube channel. And then that has been growing well. But with it, it's like, I think a big aspect of me being able to talk about the subject I talk about, like teaching how to drift and reviewing other pro drifters, things like that. Like, I need to be competing, and I do miss it.
Yeah.
But when me and the team talk about competing here in the US, it doesn't, the YouTube is still our top priority. Like, I need to build that. I believe that that's kind of my lifeline here. And there's plenty of drivers documenting their journey in Formula Drift US. So I like to think I'm fairly unique, my colorful hair and my cars are unique and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I'm still another American driver in the American series, making about it. So I early on in drifting, I was able to go out and start drifting in Japan some, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I fell in love with the culture, and that's a big inspiration in my builds, my life, kind of everything. And so when I thought about Formula Drift Japan, I was like, this is a cool story. I was like, and at the same time, when I talked to Formula Drift about it, they loved the idea.
Yeah.
They're like, we've been trying to tell people like US drivers can go out there, I don't, to my knowledge, there hasn't been a US driver or even a Western driver that's competed in the Formula Drift Japan series.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I believe there's a couple of drivers that have like gone and rented a car and done one round. I know
Yep.
of like 2 instances of that happening, but no one, to my knowledge, has done the whole series. It's just like
Yeah.
they're in the US, they stick to the US. And so now this is a compelling story and
For
something that's
sure.
cool to cover on YouTube, right?
You'd be kind of like
So
a pioneer for the sport, or at least for Western drivers heading over there, because you'd be kind of really the real first one that would seriously compete.
maybe I wouldn't say that about myself, right? But
I
I
said it.
think, yeah, but I think at the end of the day, like the videos will be rad. It's totally different.
Yeah.
There's pretty much, to put it in like layman's terms, there's only like 2 white guys in like the whole series.
Yeah. Yeah.
One's from Scotland, one's from New Zealand, and then there'll be me. And then it's like
Yeah.
there's a bunch of Japanese drivers, some Chinese, Taiwan, I think Korea. But so it'll be really cool, it'll be
Yeah.
like mixing pot of drivers, and I should be like pretty one of a kind there. And like, it'll be from my perspective. And I think that will be way more compelling for the YouTube channel. And then
Yeah.
we love those tracks. Like just everything about it is so much more exciting. So
I love it.
yeah.
That's exciting. That's
Yeah.
great. I want to know, okay, so take me kind of behind the scenes here. Maybe you have some videos of this on your YouTube channel. I didn't do a deep enough dive. I can't watch this stuff on YouTube because I just get too freaked out that something will happen to me. But do you have any crazy like crash stories, or have you ever had any injuries in your career, close calls? Because that stuff can be really scary, and we've obviously, in certain, extreme instances, there have been, fatal incidents, in racing and things like that. Do you just have any what are some like crazy behind the scenes stories that you have, more so than just, if we were to read about the sport or watch it on TV? I know you kind of do a great behind the scenes stuff and all your reaction and review type videos on your channel, but kind of kind of take us behind the scenes of maybe some crazy stories you've had in competing, or close calls with things or stuff like that.
So the cool thing about drifting and kind of, because I was living at home when I started, and so like my parents were a part of kind of that decision making and stuff. And I know my mom especially was really worried about racing just because her lack of knowledge of it. And then
Yep.
generally people just think that motorsports are dangerous, and
Yeah.
they are in some ways, but there's a lot of safety precautions taken. But with drifting, what's kind of cool and unique about it, and what does make it a little bit safer, even though in my opinion it's the most exhilarating and highest adrenaline rush motorsport, like it's just so insane. But what keeps it safer is at any one time in competition there's only 2 cars on track. So you think like NASCAR, there's like a pack of cars, and they're all right next to each other,
and
right?
high speed. You said,
And
you guys aren't even really judged on speed, so right, you really don't how
go
fast are you going?
but still you have to compare it, right? Like the fastest for Formula Drift US, I believe the fastest like entry speed is like 110 miles per hour generally, and so it's like half the speed of like NASCAR,
right?
Or not quite half, or more than half, but
Yeah.
anyways, and then you're slowing down and you're probably drifting at like 80 to 90 miles per hour max.
Okay.
So it's 90 miles per hour versus 180 miles per hour, and 2 cars versus 30 or 40. It does make a massive difference.
Definitely.
Of it. Now the thing is, crashes happen like pretty much all the time, and like bumping each other and things like that, because you're pretty much battling. I mean, you're not purposely bumping the person, but
but it happens.
Videos, they're driving like inches apart and inches off the wall. But at the end of the day, if you do crash, it's generally under 100 miles per hour, and it's
Yep.
with only one other person. So it's inherently a lot safer. People have gotten injured. To this date, knock on wood, I don't believe anyone has died from drifting.
Good.
So that kind of shows that there's been some people seriously injured for sure, but a lot of the times it was because their car wasn't very
Car
safe.
issue.
It wasn't built
Gotcha.
to set. So I don't really have any. I mean, I've obviously crashed a couple of times. I don't feel like I have any cool crash stories, but going on, like, I don't want to make it like somber at all, but just going on that, the note of like the quitting moments, I did have a recent crash in like May. We were out in Las Vegas, and it was just a drift exhibition. So that's what's kind of cool about drifting is it can be a competition, but it can also just be like an exhibition and a show, and it's really fun to watch. That's what I really like about drifting.
That is cool. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't even need to understand it, and it's just cool to see. There's a bunch of smoke.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, because you can't do that with racing. It's like exhibition. Like, we clearly know someone like was in first place. Like, you can't really. Yeah. There's no style to racing. You just want to win. Ugly, pretty, whatever. You just want to be in first place. But you guys, like, I mean, even when you get those style points. So yeah, I can see how that is, and that is a cool aspect that's specific to your sport within the whole echelon of racing.
Me to it a lot because I love that part of it. I've always been artistic and into design.
Yeah, a little creativity. Yeah,
I thought it was cool, not only in the action of the sport, but also in the cars too. And so this was one of those events. It was our first event since the whole COVID thing. So kind of on a side note, I deal really heavily with depression, anxiety. It's like probably my biggest battle with my life right now, and has been for the last couple of years. And going in there, like, I kind of felt that like heavily. And I disobeyed like my number one rule. My number one rule is like, anytime when I first go drifting, I drive through the track at like a 70-80% pace. So I'm not drifting. I'm kind of road racing it, but slow. And I'm like checking it out, feeling the traction, all that. Before I do my first drifting lap. I think I kind of went out feeling like I, kind of wanted to had something to prove after, events hadn't been around. And then I just remember like these ridiculous like nerves from my anxiety and depression. And so anyways, I ignored my rule and I went all out, and it started out, it was sick. Like, it looked really exciting. Everybody was like, oh shit, but I totally like, the course was laid out real weird, and we hadn't done any kind of parade lap to see kind of where you're supposed to go. Yeah. So I was like basically figuring out as I was going, and I was going really fast. Yeah. I got completely off course and ended up hitting the back end into the wall. And it wasn't really that bad, honestly. Like, it broke like the fender, but it broke an axle and part of the suspension. Yeah. And my crew chief, Jameson, he had the car back together in literally 30 minutes. Wow. We didn't have a spare axle. And so we drove all the way up to Vegas for this 3-day exhibition. It was going to be a great time. First event since COVID. And we got, half a lap in, and I crashed it, and we were done for the weekend. So that was definitely, I actually made a video, and it says, I'm quitting drifting. About that event. And in it, I was like, this was one of those quitting moments for sure. I was just like so beat down. I was like, come on, this is supposed to be a good, fun weekend. Right. And it's trashed. So, but yeah, that's an interesting one.
Have you ever been able to take any of your, I don't know what the seating situation is. Have you ever been able to take any of your friends out? Have you ever had any, like, taken anyone out for sort of a drifting, joyride? And like, what?
Absolutely.
So what are your friends or whoever you've taken out, like, what are their reaction when you're doing? Because you said, again, not super high speed, but you say it's the most exhilarating, most adrenaline rush in motorsports. So I mean, I imagine it would be. I mean, I'm watching you, I'm like, God, if I was in there, I'd be like, whoa. I imagine I would step out and have to like catch my balance. I'd be kissing the ground. But So what is that like? Or, you know, when you are able to take someone out and you know what's coming, you felt it, you've done it 1,000 times, and maybe you're taking someone out for the first time, you know, what's something that maybe you tell them? Do you give them any tips, or do you just tell them to buckle in and enjoy? And what are people's typical, like, kind of first reactions to it when you take them out?
So that's like, I'm glad you asked that, because that's probably one of the coolest parts about drifting is
Oh yeah.
we can give ride-alongs, and we do at these drifting exhibitions and practice events, and it's so fun. It's so exhilarating. It's like the sickest roller coaster ride you've ever been
Yeah.
on. And so generally when people hop in, we'll just tell them, you know, strap in, hang on, tell them where they can kind of put their hands and hang on.
Yep.
A lot of people, it kind of makes me, I don't know. It makes me a little bit upset. And so I try to stop people, but everyone tries to film it and have their phone out. And I'm like
being at
just
a concert, just enjoy the
yeah.
fucking concert.
I'm like, just enjoy it. Put your phone away. So I always try to say something. If they get 2 laps, you know, if there's a chance where they're going to get 2 laps, then I'll say, hey, why don't you film the next one? But like,
Yeah.
enjoy this one. It's really, I think it's a special moment.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like, enjoy it together. And so, yeah, some people black out. Like, they're like, I don't really remember what happened.
Yeah. No, I believe it.
It's just it's so disorienting, and it's so quick, and there's so much sound. And especially like if you've never been strapped in like that or had a helmet on, it can be somewhat anxiety inducing.
Right.
And I always try to make it really crazy. I'm always trying to scare the person in the passenger seat. So yeah, I don't know. It's so fun. And that's one of my favorite parts. I love giving ride-alongs, and I've always loved kind of sharing that experience, because they always walk away and they're all pumped up, you know, high-fiving their friends and smiling. And it's really cool to know that you had a part in, you know, that experience.
For sure. I think the only thing I've ever had close to that is when I show people movies that have big twists and they haven't seen it before. That's like my biggest thing, where I'm waiting like an hour and a half just for like that one moment. And I'm just like watching their face, and I just want to be like, here it comes. But that's
it's
like
similar. I mean, it really is. That was like a funny example, but it's true. It's like, you're like, that was cool. Like, I got to impact that person's day.
Yeah.
That's special.
No, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. And I know, so you graduated from ASU as well. We're fellow Sun Devils. So what were you out at? Now you were starting your grad degree, or you got a graduate degree. You were out at USC. Was that right?
Yep.
So what did you?
So I went and got my master's in entrepreneurship and innovation.
Cool.
At the Marshall School of Business up there. So
I
did ASU. I did entrepreneurship undergrad there as well.
Nice.
And then went and worked on a couple of businesses, traded cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
And I knew I wanted to go to grad school. I was just like, I think, and I knew I wanted to go for entrepreneurship. So I was like, I think I need to have some more experience in actually starting and working on businesses. So I did that for like 2 years, and then did grad school.
Awesome.
So,
well, that's awesome, man. Well, listen, this was a blast. I felt I learned so much today. It was so cool to talk to you. Is Larry your dad? Is he the one that reached out to me? Yeah. So I'm so glad that a shout out to Larry, because I know hopefully he'll watch for reaching out. I've had all kinds of different people on my podcast. No one that has done anything close to what you do. So that's really cool for me to be able to talk to you, and I hope just people enjoy. You got a new fan out of this for sure, so I'm gonna be following your yeah, of course, man. I'm gonna be following your stuff and looking forward to what you have going on. So just thank you so much, man. And I just really enjoyed it, learned a lot, and I think the people are gonna love it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And if you guys are into cars, or you want to learn a little bit more, you know, just search Haugen Racing, Haugen. Even on Google will show up, but we got a big YouTube channel. I'm not going to ask you to subscribe, but I will ask you watch a video. And then if you feel inclined to subscribe, then I'd appreciate that.
I like that. I like that. Bet on yourself. Go check out Haugen Racing YouTube, almost to 70K. Like I said, that's where I did all of my
hoping today, maybe.
Yeah, hopefully it hits. But yeah, that's where I did a lot of my research and picked a few things I wanted to talk about. I'm definitely going to do a deeper dive into that. But yeah, it's really great stuff. Reviews, great behind the scenes stuff. You're real about it. You know, you're really kind of, you know, laying it down how it is. So it's really good stuff. So yeah, just thank you again. And thank you everyone for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, Joe Vore Podcast, Apple and Spotify as well. Thank you again, Matt Haugen.